If you're just getting up, we've had a major explosion at a plant in Port Neches, happened shortly before 1 a.m. this morning. Shook the entire area from from Groves to Port Arthur, across the river into Bridge City. We're being told it could be felt even as far as Louisiana. Now, again, how strong the shocks were, I can't speak to that. We are trying to, we have what's our live WeatherNet camera. We have one located in mid-county. Now, this is miles away from the plant site, and the flames have died down significantly, but we're looking across, we're looking over towards from 365. You see somebody says they felt it in Louisiana and Vinton. So that's kind of, and certainly we've also heard that it was felt. I was hoping that maybe we could play this video. There you go. This is pretty dramatic video from obviously earlier in the night. I'm going to bring this down a little bit. And you can see the towers, so you can see, just kind of get an idea in relation to that, just how large the flames were and how involved it was. And this is obviously much closer to the incident than we've been able to get this morning. I'm not sure that we naturally want to get any closer than that.
But I got to show you the impact of this explosion felt throughout the city as far as damage. This is the door at Citgo, and it basically blew the door in. And right behind, so they pretty much secured it as best as they can with these waste baskets. You know, the store remains open. I think around the corner, a lot of workers are. You remain open, right?
Yes.
Well, were you here when it happened?
No.
Where were you?
I was at home.
You were at home. Wow. Well, how do you live here in Port Neches?
I live in Groves.
Did you feel the explosion?
You can feel the explosion at the house. I mean, like, it just shook it. I thought it was lightning. I didn't know it was an explosion at the refinery.
And then you come here. You work here.
Yeah. And one of my customers called me and told me what happened.
And are y'all open 24 hours?
No, sir.
So, well, now y'all are.
Yeah, now I'm open to help everybody out, you know.
37 past the hour. Angel San Juan now, who has been up all morning since the first report of the explosion. Of course, he was one of the first ones in his apartment complex to realize what was going on. How has it changed now, Angel, from being pitch black at 1 o'clock, 1:15 when you and I first talked, to where we are here at 6:37 with some light starting to filter in?
Well, I think what you've been talking about in the past few minutes is look right behind there. That is, look at that massive plume of smoke that is just basically crossing the city of Port Neches right now over what is Magnolia Avenue, also Highway 366, pretty ominous. And I should point out, I know you had mentioned Groves and the shelter in place. I just got a phone call, and you might have already mentioned this, but the city of Groves has lifted its shelter in place.
This particular camera is about the closest in location to that particular plant. And it's actually on Highway 365, close to the Central Mall shopping area, but we've got it pivoted around and at least zoomed in as much as we can. But with the wind being as excessive as it is now, and not excessive, but when you zoom in a camera that's mounted that high, this close in, any little bit of wind is going to be shaking it to some extent. So we're seeing that currently.
We're still working for you tonight, getting more answers. So let's go ahead and begin our team coverage tonight. Angel San Juan is live in Port Neches. Tiffany Murphy is in Nederland. Both standing by for us tonight, working very hard. You guys, I'm sure that you all are doing everything you can to stay safe out there. Angel, let's go to you first. You are closest to the plant, so go ahead and tell us what you're seeing, what you're hearing right now.
Well, Kimberly, you're correct about safety. Of course, we are following the orders of the police officers and law enforcement here. And we started this afternoon immediately after that second explosion very near to the plant at Merriman and Magnolia. Now, Magnolia is the street that it's 366, but that's what it's called within the Port Neches city limits. But that's when the mandatory evacuation started and police officers started going around town to help telling folks to leave this area, and including us, they told us to move further back. So now we're pretty much on the edge, the entrance to Port Neches.
And right now we want to go out to Tiffany Murphy. As we mentioned, she is standing by in Nederland. So Tiffany, a lot of people flocking out of the area trying to escape. What are you seeing there in Nederland?
Hey, good evening, Kimberly. That's right. We are in Nederland on the corner of Twin City Highway and Nederland Avenue. And I will agree with Angel. This is the slowest we have seen in traffic. Earlier tonight, about 45 minutes ago, we had a couple Nederland police officers that were directing traffic, and there were a lot of cars on the road. So it has definitely slowed down quite substantially since we arrived a couple hours ago. Now, I'm going to have our photojournalist pan. As night is falling, you can see the dark clouds that are still billowing from the TPC plant. Earlier today, I spoke with Allison Nathan Getz, who said, don't panic, but you need to evacuate. There are folks in imminent danger. That is why that mandatory evacuation order, Kim, has been issued. She said, let's err on the side of caution. We are not sure exactly what or how much of that butadiene is in the air. So please evacuate within that 4-mile radius, which is all the way from North Port Arthur, Nederland, Groves, and Port Neches.
Chad, we want to know, what does it look like now on our tower cam?
Well, yeah, first of all, that second explosion this afternoon, 1:48 p.m. And as you can see, the picture behind me that we captured from our WeatherNet camera in Mid-County, you can see the exact moment of the explosion, that thick black smoke that has been billowing up from the plant throughout the course of the day today. Let's fast forward about 5 hours. You can see right now, very dark in the skies. Certainly, we're looking at, again, some of the flames that you can actually see now. So there's a little bit of orange glow to the sky.
Gotcha. So quite a different look from what we see every night, of course. And I want to ask you, where is the wind sending this smoke tonight?
Right now, winds are sending it towards the south-southwest. We've got northeast winds out there. But through the course of the evening, those winds are going to start to shift. First, they're going to shift to the east, and then eventually tomorrow afternoon towards the southeast. So that's something that we're really going to watch closely, because that will send the plumes of smoke more westward across Jefferson and possibly even to Chambers County, and then eventually tomorrow maybe as far north as I-10, China, and Nome, in those areas.
Wow, okay. And the big question on this, we turn to Dr. Levine for this. Dr. Levine, you are our expert for many things, and I understand that this is kind of out of your realm of normal practice, but still want to get your opinion as a physician. Breathing in the chemicals that people are, the ones that are produced there, what can be the risks here?
Well, I mean, the risk is always there. I mean, I think we know that, and that's the reason we're on the air and we're talking about it. You know, it's almost like carbon monoxide. Anytime you breathe in a gas like that can cause harm to the body, and basically, you know, it affects your oxygen level in your body, and when your oxygen level goes down in your body, then it affects everything, your heart, your brain, and your kidneys. So the immediate exposure is there, and as the person was talking about earlier, the long-term exposure is also there as well in terms of cancer and other malignancies that can occur.
We're continuing our coverage of the explosions at the TPC plant this evening. And first, we want to give you a timeline reminder of what happened. At 1 a.m. you had your first explosion, and then at 10 a.m. there was a news conference telling us that 3 of the workers there at the plant were injured. They were taken to the hospital, treated, and later released. At 1:50 p.m. we had a second explosion. We covered that for you on air and online. At 2:40 p.m. the mandatory evacuation went out for a 4-mile radius within that plant area, and then at 4 p.m. a disaster was declared. You've probably seen videos and pictures on social media by now showing the explosion at the TPC plant or the fire. Tom Wright reports it just shows how many cameras we have capturing everything.
A flash in the sky, and then the boom.
There it is. That's what it is.
Cameras across the Port Neches area capture the light and sound of an explosion.
I think a plant just blew up. It woke me up.
And that got the attention of the people. With cameras readily available and everywhere,
Jesus.
The event was captured from every direction and every angle. From outside,
well, no, because it broke the whole door frame.
To inside.
So we're gonna have to figure out a way to get the door frame back up.
A shocking blast that scared man and beast.
Polyethylene. Some bad there.
Oh man, it's getting carried across the river.
That sent many out into the community to capture what happened.
It's that plant. It's on fire.
And
yeah, it was bad.
To spread the news.
It was loud from my house, and I'm like 10 blocks down.
Tonight, we're continuing our coverage of the TPC explosion that's left houses damaged and a plume of smoke billowing into the air. At a news conference earlier today, officials say they still don't know when people can expect to go back home safely, even though some are already going back, and they still don't know what may have caused the explosions. And tonight, officials say the fire is contained but not controlled. Jefferson County Judge Jeff Brannick says the situation at the burning plant is improving, but we're not out of the woods just yet. In the news conference this afternoon, Judge Brannick says he will not lift the mandatory evacuation order for the 4-mile radius surrounding TPC until he's convinced that citizens will be safe. A decision could come as early as tomorrow morning when the judge meets with emergency responders. TPC has set up a hotline for citizens who suffered damages as a result of Wednesday's blast. Now that will extend to evacuation expenses. As we mentioned earlier, many residents are going back to their homes in Port Neches after the explosions at the TPC plant. Fox 4's Han Radford reports why families decided to return.
Smoke lingers across Port Neches after back-to-back explosions at the TPC plant blew out windows and damaged homes.
It blew the back door off of here for the garage, and it blew the patio doors in.
Thursday morning, Chad Attaway and his family returned to their home a few miles from the plant.
It was horrible last night because we had to move, leave, and then we seen the fire went down this morning on the news, so we decided to come back because it's obviously not as big as it was.
The fire's smaller. As you notice, the smoke plume seems to be reducing size.
Police Chief Paul Lemoyne says families are able to come home and gather their belongings. They must be off the streets before the 10 p.m. curfew.
We're primarily focused on patrols in the neighborhoods around the businesses where people have left, and there's houses that may be unsecured due to the damage from the explosion.
Attaway believes TPC and first responders are getting a handle on the situation, and his family will celebrate the holiday in their home.
Now we're back home cooking, and I'm glad for that because I love Thanksgiving.
In Port Neches, Tan Radford, Fox 4, working for you.
Major headlines stemming from the explosions at the TPC plant and that fire that followed. Right now, you can look at the smoke coming from the plant and see the dramatic decrease in the plume as compared to Wednesday. An explosion rocked the plant in Port Neches at about 1 a.m. Wednesday morning, and a fireball erupted. The second explosion at about 2 in the afternoon created an even larger fire, and more black smoke poured from the site. No one was killed. 3 workers suffered injuries, 1 burns, 2 fractures. Each was treated and released. 5 others in the community sustained cuts from glass. Well, families are steadily making their ways back home to Port Neches tonight, but as Fox 4's Angel San Juan reports, in the immediate future, life there will be a little different.
Dana Weldon catching up on yard work. The retired Port Neches police officer has had a lot of alone time the past couple of days. He's one of the few citizens who decided not to evacuate the city after 2 explosions at the TPC plant. But Friday morning, Jefferson County Judge Jeff Brannick lifted the mandatory evacuation order. Are you looking forward to getting your neighbors back?
Yeah, well, kind of. Yeah, no, I'm good. I'm good about that. Yeah, it'll be nice.
Residents are allowed back into Port Neches, but their mobility remains restricted. There are safety zones surrounding the plant where fires still burn.
We don't need looky-loos, because what happens is we have first responders that are out there trying to continue to protect the safety of our citizens. And when you start bunching up around this restricted area, then they're impeded as far as being able to do their job. So You know, I get pretty harsh when I say, I'm not asking you, I'm telling you, stay away from the restricted area for their own safety as well. For their own safety as well as our first responders.
And Judge Brannick advises those with respiratory issues to avoid the area until the smoke subsides. Another concern, debris from the plant that landed on people's properties. TPC officials warn you not to pick it up nor touch it.
Our facility is a dated facility, and by dated I mean it's been around for a number of years, built back in the 40s. Asbestos at the time was an acceptable insulator. And so there still is the possibility of asbestos.
TPC set up a hotline for folks that find this debris to call it in, and the company will dispose of it. The same number, 1-866-601-5880, can be called to report damages and evacuation expenses. Work to repair damages to 5 Port Neches Groves ISD campuses is already underway, but the start of school after the Thanksgiving holiday is delayed 1 day. Classes Monday canceled. Superintendent Dr. Mike Gonzalez expressing pride in his teachers and students.
They're resilient. We've been through so much. We've been through hurricanes, we've been through cyber attacks, and now we're dealing with this incident. You know, they do well. They'll come back and they'll do just fine.
And Weldon hopes the plant where this ordeal started will make a comeback. He says he knows it's generating many mixed feelings right now, but he says it's played an important role in Port Neches history.
That plant my wife's father worked at, I worked at it when I got out of the Marine Corps. You know, it's brought a lot to the community. Hopefully they can build it all back.
In Port Neches, Angel San Juan, Fox 4, working for you.
With mandatory evacuations lifted for the 4-mile radius that includes Port Neches, Groves, and Nederland, there has now been a safety zone set up for residents. The designated safety zone is defined as no access to Spur 136 north of FM 366, no access on the north end of Magnolia Avenue, FM 366 at Park Street, no southbound access on FM 366 and Hagaboom is closed, no access at Grigsby Avenue and Spur 136. Now Main Street is accessible up to Avenue K and Avenue L and Park. Returning residents are cautioned to remain aware of the plume's location. And tonight we're learning more about what's in the tanks on the TPC property. Tiffany has been asking the tough questions, researching what TPC has said and questions the company told us it could not answer when we posed them last night. Tiffany is holding the company accountable for providing answers to Fox 4 and the public, and what products were inside those tanks there at the site. Tiffany?
Absolutely, Jessica. So according to federal guidelines and regulations, every company needs to know what is in the tanks on their property. And just after 2 o'clock this afternoon, I spoke with the production manager with TPC and the public information officer for Jefferson County. They tell me they started compiling that information for us last night. So I wanted to know specifically what is in each of the tanks on their property. Previously, like you said, Jessica, at news conferences, the media was told TPC wasn't sure because power went out to the plant after the first explosion just before 1 o'clock on Wednesday morning. So that we're all clear, each petrochemical company is required to have what's called process data, up to the minute information about the chemicals stored and used. That information is electronic, so even if power is lost on site, we should still be able to find out the last measurements just before the first explosion. We've been digging all afternoon. Here's what we've learned. Let's break it down for you. TPC has a total of 102 tanks. Those tanks are divided into 2 types, spheres and atmospheric tanks. Not all the tanks were in service when the explosion happened. 14 were out of service, 88 were in service. They contained some sort of material at the time of the explosion.
Well, a lot of concern tonight surrounding the asbestos exposure for those who live near the TPC plant. Today, officials told us asbestos may be in the debris, which could be found in Port Neches and parts of Port Arthur in Nederland as well. Fox 4 news anchor Kimberly Roosley is here to explain the risks of exposure. Kimberly?
Jessica, this is definitely a public health concern. TPC and city and county officials urge residents not to touch the debris if they see a white or beige chalky substance. But of course, some people are already back at home and have already started removing debris. TPC is asking homeowners near the plant to survey the conditions of their yards. One of the vessels that was compromised at the plant could have blown the debris over into the neighborhood, which may contain asbestos. And of course, asbestos is a known human carcinogen. According to the National Cancer Institute, when you breathe in asbestos fibers, they may get trapped in the lungs, and over time, those fibers can cause scarring and inflammation. Symptoms of exposure include shortness of breath, dry cough, and chest pain. And there is sufficient evidence that asbestos causes mesothelioma. So if you see any white or beige substance that appears to be asbestos, some of it may be chalky, some of it in blanket form, some of it in block form, call the TPC Claims Hotline, which is 866-601-5880, and here's why.
But any debris that you have is potentially contaminated debris. And there's two issues. One, we don't want anyone that's not qualified to remove that material to remove it and expose themselves. And two, this debris, if it is contaminated, has to be disposed of properly and cannot go in a normal landfill.
So very important that you do not touch it again. A few hours ago, we asked the TPC spokesperson, Peyton Keith, if they have any idea how much asbestos may have made it into the surrounding community. This is what he tells us. We can't speculate as to the amount of debris outside the site at this time. Asbestos is in the debris. It's important to re-emphasize the safety messages that Judge Brannick made in the press conference earlier, though. If residents encounter any debris from the event on or near their property, they should immediately contact the appropriate authorities. Residents should not attempt to handle or remove any debris.
It's blown in. They're not shattered, but they're all blown in. But it blew the top lock and everything. It just blew this wide open.
As I was cutting the grass, I see like 5 or 6 clusters of insulation.
Any debris that you have is potentially contaminated debris.
5 days since the explosions at the TPC plant in Port Neches. Tonight, we have a look at damage and debris along with updated air quality testing information from an evening news conference.
Fox 4 News starts right now.
Air monitoring, structural damage, and remaining fires. We're continuing to follow the aftermath of the TPC plant explosion in Port Neches. There are some new developments from today to catch you up on. The Unified Command Center tells Fox 4 there was a loud noise around 8:45 this morning, but Jefferson County Judge Jeff Brannick tells us it was from equipment settling and there's no cause for concern. The judge also tells us all towers inside the plant are expected to fall or either be taken down. Also today, cleanup crews have been making their way across neighborhoods and nearby school campuses searching for and clearing out debris that may have fallen from the blasts. Wednesday's explosions rocked neighborhoods, broke windows, and raised major concerns about the chemicals being released. TPC Director of Health, Safety, and Security Troy Monk addressed the ongoing fire and smoke that remains from the explosions.
We still have active fires. We are confident that the fires are contained, otherwise we would have not have taken the change in position that we currently have. So there's still going to be smoke in the air. There's still going to be flames visible at night. That is going to be addressed as quickly and as safely as we possibly can.
Well, TPC claims representatives will be back in neighborhoods tomorrow. More than 100 of them were out today meeting with residents who have damaged homes. Fox 4's Jessica Crawford has this story for us tonight. Jessica?
Kimberly, those representatives are in the field from about 8 in the morning to an hour before sundown. And after the explosions that took place at this plant, a lot of residents tell me that they're glad to be making their claims.
This Port Neches home has stood strong since 1971. Now, following Wednesday's explosions and the damage they left behind, the homeowners are filing a claim with TPC representatives to help restore it.
It went good.
James D. Henry spoke with a rep Tuesday for the second time.
He was nice enough to come back by. He was here yesterday for 2 hours or better.
About 100 representatives visited with homeowners like the Henrys Tuesday in Port Neches. The visits are expected to last for several days.
He didn't rush through it. He took his time, did a great job.
The Henrys are also relying on help from their church, Southside Baptist Church in Port Neches. Members of their congregation are helping them make repairs.
It makes us feel good.
Between filing a claim with TPC and friends pitching in,
It's nothing. God can't get us through.
this family believes rebuilding is possible.
It's just
It'll take a
material
while.
stuff.
We'll get there.
Restoring this home to its former glory.
We just want to get our house back like it was. I told him, I said, I don't want any extra. I just want my house back fixed right.
Now, residents outside of the high-impact areas that have submitted claims through the helpline number 1-866-601-5880 will be contacted and visited by appointment. Reporting from Port Neches, Jessica Crawford, Fox 4, working for you.
Tonight, the voluntary evacuation and shelter-in-place order in Port Neches is no longer. After increased butadiene levels at the TPC plant left residents with a choice of staying or going, Fox 4's Tan Radford reports why some sheltered in place.
Wednesday night, thousands in Port Neches were given the option to evacuate or shelter in place after levels of 1,3-butadiene increased at the TPC plant.
I worked in a chemical plant, so it doesn't scare me.
BC Clemens chose to shelter in place while TPC workers began to get the levels under control.
We evacuated the first time, and at 10 o'clock last night, it was too late for us to do much of anything, and we didn't smell anything, so we stayed.
Clemens lives near Merriman, one of the 3 streets where the highest levels of butadiene were detected. Other streets included were Earl Street and Saybrook Lane.
Well, of course, you don't want it in your neighborhood, but it's not going to be anything that's going to be a lasting problem. So, I'm going about my business right now.
Thursday morning, TPC staff were able to reduce levels to non-irritating amounts. The voluntary evacuation lifted.
Well, I think they're doing the best they can do. Nobody likes it, but it's never happened before. We've been here 20-something years.
In Port Neches, Tan Radford, Fox 4, working for you.
TPC will continue to monitor the air levels. As of now, the amounts of butadiene have been reduced and residents are safe in their homes. Well, the explosions and fire at TPC have prompted an investigation by the U.S. Chemical Safety Board. The on-site fires that were burning chemicals like butadiene have been put out, allowing a more purified level of the chemical to seep into the atmosphere. Toxicologists say the levels measure 0.23 parts per million, which is considered harmful or non-harmful rather to humans. Asbestos has not been reported. Inhibitors are being added to the on-site tanks that currently hold these chemicals to avoid reactions within the tanks until they are transported to an off-site location that's still being decided.